Welcome back to Welcome to the Schoolhouse. We are continuing on with a series about the philosophy and foundation of American government. As we've already identified, there's a lot of craziness, drama, and culture in the world around us. And if we're trying to figure out how is our government supposed to work, what's the president's job, what's Congress's job, what's the Supreme Court really even doing, before we can really understand the role as assigned by the Constitution, as outlined, details in the Constitution, we need to understand the philosophy that gave us the Constitution. For that philosophy, we back up to the Declaration of Independence.
And so Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers lay out in the Declaration that all men are created equal, created by God, and then endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, and then goes on to talk about how government is instituted to protect those rights, but what are some of those inalienable rights that government is supposed to protect?
Right, so the Founding Fathers identify in the Declaration that the first of these is life, and then liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And pursuit of happiness is interesting. We've done a lot of work looking into it, and this notion of why was it pursuit of happiness? Because in that era, they weren't really talking pursuit of happiness. They were talking about property more than anything else.
I mean, you can even go in the writings of guys like Sam Adams. They're talking about the three phrases as life, liberty, and property. And that really goes back to John Locke, who during that time, John Locke is kind of the all-star guy that the Founding Fathers point to. They quote him almost nonstop throughout this period of the Declaration, these early days of the Revolutionary War. And John Locke says life, liberty, and property. But when they're writing the Declaration, they make a decision to not say property explicitly, but rather say the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, so part of one of the arguments and thoughts behind why would they change it from property to pursuit of happiness, part of the argument is because anti-slavery Founding Fathers said we don't want to be confused what this notion of property is. Property is not owning people. That's not the property we're talking about. We're talking about the ability to own your own land, right? Almost like you can be your own boss, an entrepreneur, that you have your own stuff, your possessions, your money, and the king and the government has no right to come and take those from you. But here's the point. It was life, liberty, and then pursuit of happiness, or in this case, private property, excluding slavery, because again, many Founding Fathers were against that notion. It's believed maybe why that change in verbiage occurred. What's significant also is if you go forward historically, you can go to the Bill of Rights where the Founding Fathers identified there are other inalienable rights, other God-given rights like the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, or the right to self-defense and private property. They outline a lot more detailed other God-given rights, but this notion that government's primary role is to protect our God-given rights is something certainly you find in a lot of their writings. We have just one example. This is James Wilson, who was a signer of the Declaration. He then signed the Constitution. He also was a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and he taught at essentially a law school, but it was kind of a law training. Back then, it used to be that lawyers would be mentored under another lawyer, and that was kind of how you did. You would take the bar, and then you became a lawyer. He said, well, let's do some organized law training, so he began to lecture many law students. This is a collection of his lectures. It became the first law books in America. He is explaining to law students what his government's role was to protect our God-given rights. And he explained the very first right God gave us is the right to life. So government's number one job is to protect human life. And this is an interesting thought because the discussion and debate that is often had today is about abortion or the right to life.
Yeah, because, I mean, ever since Roe versus Wade, a huge idea from one side of the political spectrum is that the Constitution has this kind of hidden right in there, a right to abortion, a right to take life. But as we go back to the principles of the Declaration, and once you understand those principles, the fact of the matter is exactly the opposite. The Declaration and then the Constitution specifically are instituted to protect that first right to life.
So one of the things that James Wilson does for his law students, he explains when does life begin, how does this work, and what is the role of government in protecting that life? Here's what he says. With consistency, beautiful and undeviating human life from its commencement to its close is protected by the common law. The common law is a law that America operates under. This is part of even the Constitution, common law adopted under the Constitution. He continued, in the contemplations of law, life begins when the infant is first able to stir in the womb. By the law, life is protected not only from immediate destruction, but from every degree of actual violence and in some cases from every degree of danger. What he points out is that as soon as that infant is able to stir in the womb, so you're talking about an unborn child now, he's telling his law students, back in the founding era, that an unborn child is protected by the law. And today people might argue, but yeah, if the child is stirring in the womb, now we're talking about so many weeks into the pregnancy. And here's where historical context and content matters. Because back in early America, there wasn't a magic stick you could pee on that would change a color that would turn, right, a positive and negative, and all of a sudden, oh, we know we're pregnant. Magic stick worked, right? There's not a magic stick. How did you, was that awkward for you?
I'm pretty young.
Yeah, okay, so he didn't know about this yet. So they didn't have a pregnancy test back then. So back then, when would you know if you were pregnant or not? The way you would know you were pregnant was when that infant first stirred in the womb. Why this matters, what he just told all of his law students is as soon as a woman knows she is pregnant, the laws in America protect that child's life. Why? Because the very first right that we have as Americans or as humans in general is the right to life. And the Founding Fathers recognized the primary role of government is to protect the right to life. Now, there's many more statements from other Founding Fathers. In fact, a great place to find out more about even some of this basic philosophy is a new work we have.
And if you want to know more about the Declaration, what it means, the foundation provided especially for America, the Constitution, the institutions that are established, and how those institutions are supposed to be acting and working today, check out our new book, The American Story. You can get it at WallBuilders.com. It really is. I mean, I've read a lot of books, and I can say this totally unbiased. This is a great book to read, especially
totally unbiased.
Totally unbiased. I'm a definite third party. My name is not here. It's not there at all.
Probably on the inside covers it doesn't appear. But here's the reality is, as much as we want to learn about the Founding Fathers and what has made America unique, different, how is our government supposed to work, there is a lot of great things we can go back and learn. But the philosophy of our government is very explicit in the Declaration. The Founding Fathers acknowledge that there is a God. That God has given mankind rights, and the primary function of government is to protect our God-given rights.